Christopher Sweat, Graystack Media. Now this is Anabel Mendoza.
Yes. Hey, everybody.
We're sitting here. Where are we sitting?
So we are at Sip and Savor in Bronzeville.
Okay.
So south side of Chicago. And this is actually, I started my campaign in Bronzeville.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I did
here?
like my formal launch. We had our big, it was much warmer outside in August, but we had it at the park here in Bronzeville. And we also started our first kind of like campaign event was at Masjid Ihsan, which is not too far from here, maybe a couple streets over, but that's where we kicked off the campaign. It's obviously a very historic neighborhood in the city of Chicago for many reasons, but also because of the rich history of music and culture. And to me, I think Bronzeville is much of the heart of the city.
That's awesome. And I think I live in your district.
Oh, really?
Is that biased? I live in Streeterville.
Okay, yeah,
so
you're in the district.
Yeah, and you're running for Illinois' 7th.
Yep, 7th Congressional District, and it's a really unique district because it includes Streeterville. It goes much of south and west sides of Chicago. So you go all the way south to Englewood. And you go all the way west to some of the western suburbs. So you're going to go through the Loop, the medical district, where UIC is. Keep going west. You're going to hit Oak Park, River Forest, Forest Park, Maywood. The Broadview Detention Facility is in this district. It's a massive district.
That's crazy.
Yeah. There's so much, and one of the things I always say about this district is that it does tell us a national story about our diversity. This is a very diverse district. You have, I think it's roughly 40% African American. There's a growing Latino population here, close to 20% Latino, close to 10% Asian American. And then you obviously have white communities here as well. And so it is very racially diverse. And then you also see diversity in terms of, it's socioeconomic inequality, to put it frankly. You see it in the downtown area, places like Streeterville. And then you go to places like Englewood or Austin or Garfield Park. And that inequality is just very stark. It's extremely obvious when you go from one neighborhood to the next.
Sure. I see that. And then also you grew up in Chicago?
Yeah, I did. My whole life. My whole family is here. Aunts, uncles, grandparents that are still living, cousins. So my whole family is scattered throughout the city. But I grew up on the southwest side in West Lawn. And that's a neighborhood that's gerrymandered. It's divided between the 4th district and the 7th district. Okay. And I grew up right around Marquette Park, which I have a lot of memories of riding my bike as a kid around Marquette Park with my dad, he's an avid runner. So he would always run and I would ride my bike. But, my childhood in West Lawn, I have, again, very great memories of being a kid there. But it was also where I saw my parents struggle the most. And it wasn't until I got older that my mom actually started to disclose more of this to me. She tried to, as much as she could, kind of hide the struggles that her and my dad were going through at the time, where they were working their full-time jobs, but when all the bills were paid, all they had left was a few dollars.
Sure.
And 3 kids to feed. I'm the youngest of 3. And there were nights where my mom would make breakfast for dinner, which was usually pancakes. And as a kid, who doesn't love pancakes for dinner? But those were the nights my parents were actually struggling the most, where they were going to bed hungry, where they were skipping meals because pancakes for dinner was only because we had pancake mix left.
Sure.
Because $9 in your bank account isn't going to allow you to go to the grocery store and get nutritious food for your family.
Right.
And looking back on that, seeing what got my family out of that, it was opportunity and economic opportunity. And the fact that, to me, is something that should be a right for everybody. We need to expand economic opportunity in this district, especially because that's what lifts families up.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this many years later, as an adult, you would think that things would have gotten better for working families, and they haven't. They're actively and very rapidly getting worse.
Yeah, I see that. And then just to kind of give some context to your district, then when you talk about wealth disparity, I am going to guess that it's the highest disparity in all of Illinois.
Yeah.
And probably one of the top in the country.
Yes. If you look at the median household income wealth for a white family in Chicago, it's over $200,000. If you look at the median household income wealth for a Black family, it's $0. That's not a mistake. That's by design. That's policy. And in this district in particular, that policy, it also affects people's health, their ability to live. When you see from downtown, from a place like Streeterville, on average, people live to the age of 90. Their average income is well into the six figures. But you go to a place like Englewood, and that life expectancy drops significantly. People on average live 30 years less than their counterparts in Streeterville. And they're also making significantly less. And again, this is because this on the south and west sides, we know Chicago is one of the most segregated cities in the country, where you have Black, brown, immigrant communities segregated to the south and west sides. And by generations of policies like redlining and housing injustice and disinvestment, you are quite literally starving communities of economic opportunity. And again, as I said before, even looking back at my family, it's economic opportunity that allows families to be able to sustain themselves.
Sure.
It's the bottom line. Yeah.
Okay, so then this, like how you grew up and then the work that you were doing, that maybe opened up your mind to thinking, okay, maybe I should become politically active?
So I got involved in the immigrant rights movement pretty much right after college. I graduated with my degrees in journalism and specifically social justice and investigative reporting. And after I did that, I did a little bit of freelancing. And one of the pieces I'm most proud of was an investigative piece that I did on the outbreak of COVID inside the Stateville, Illinois prison and what that was doing to the individuals who have been incarcerated. And this was not being covered. It was not being covered, the conditions that they were facing, but also just this deliberate, basic neglect of people's humanity and of their health and their safety. I mean, COVID obviously devastated the entire country, but if you looked inside inside Stateville, I mean, the folks inside were just being abandoned. They were being treated like subhuman. And it was being in the journalism track, I started to report on immigration. I started to report on children who are also kept in federal detention centers, often unaccompanied, alone. And these are children who are separated from their parents, or they came to the United States without their parents. And maybe there's some young students of color out there who are thinking about journalism, and I certainly see the value in that. But personally, when I was in newsrooms and I faced editors who would tell me, like, your piece reads too much like advocacy. You're too close to this story. You clearly have an opinion. And then, I reflected and I was like, yeah, damn right. I have an opinion on this. Sure. And that's what pivoted me out of traditional journalism. And I said, okay, I'm gonna get more involved in the immigrant rights movement, where I've been ever since. And I specifically work with immigrant youth, DACA recipients. I worked with children who are in, as I mentioned, detention centers and are unaccompanied in this country. And that being on that side of things, seeing the results of federal policy and our taxpayer dollars and what it funds, I mean, it's egregious. And seeing that every single day and knowing that it's policy that resulted in this, it fired me up. And I think we're at a very, very specific juncture as a country right now where we are facing compounding existential crises. And the type of Democrat, the type of progressive Democrat that we elect deeply matters, because we are not in a place where we can afford to lose, where we can afford elected representatives who cede ground or try to play nice with authoritarianism. We need people who stand up, who have a spine, who have guts. And to be quite frank, I was raised by two hardworking, working class parents who, they always told me, don't let people walk on you. Sure. Don't let people walk on you. You need to learn how to punch back. And quite literally, we need fighters. We need people who aren't going to cede ground when we are seeing civilians executed in the street by ICE and CBP.
Sure. I know. It's quite shocking. Yeah. And then also, like, you were obviously doing a lot of things in immigrant rights before running. I mean, when you announced, was it before Trump got elected?
So, no, he was in his second term when I announced that I was running. But it had been something that I was thinking about for a while, was running for office. And I think, again...
But we couldn't have projected, like, this reality that we're...
No. And I think, though, being in the immigrant rights space, you see the warning signs. And in fact, we have always been, I mean, we were, the organization that I work at, we were the first in the movement to say abolish ICE. And that was years ago.
Okay.
You know, so for years, we've been elevating what's been going on inside detention centers. The fact that these for-profit detention facilities run by Geo Group and Core Civic, and that it's billions of our taxpayer dollars that go to these federal facilities, and that there are deaths happening inside. I mean, over 30 deaths just happened in detention facilities in 2025. That is the highest in nearly 2 decades. And just in the start of the year, I mean, we are, end of January right now? It's only been a few weeks into 2026, and there's already been over 6 deaths in detention facilities. That's on top of the executions we're seeing in the street of Renee Nicole Good, right? Of Alex Preddy, of Keith Porter in LA, of Silverio Villegas Gonzalez in Franklin Park here. So in the movement, we've been calling attention to this for years. This is not new, but it is reaching a different level of aggression. And I think it's coming, quite literally, we've seen it here in Chicago. It's coming to our front doors. We are seeing what is happening in the streets.
Yeah. And I think immigration discourse and policy conversations used to be more economic.
Oh, yeah.
But somehow Barack Obama transformed immigration into the security context. And so I think we're seeing this evolution of the increased securitization of what I think a lot of people are saying should be a basic human right.
Yeah. I mean, look, if we're just being honest here, migration is a natural human thing. We move around, and that is part of our history. Many people move states, many people move cities, many people move countries. That is also a very courageous decision to make. My grandfather and my dad migrated from a small town in the state of San Luis Potosí in Mexico, and that was in the 1970s. My grandfather came first in the 1970s, and my grandmother was still in Mexico, and she was pregnant with my dad at the time that my grandfather left. And I always was just like blown away by this story, because my dad and his father were separated for 7 years while my grandfather tried to come to the States and plant roots here in Chicago. He chose Chicago for whatever reason. I was like, you can't choose anything more. He picked Chicago. But my dad didn't meet his father until he was 7 years old. And so imagine what that's like to meet someone and for your mom to say, this is your dad, by the way. And as a child, those first 7 years, especially, those are your formative years.
Sure.
You know, and we need to acknowledge the courage that it takes to move countries, to cross seas and rivers for your family. And when we talk about the abolition of ICE, something, again, that I fully support, it's not just ICE. We also need to be talking about CBP, the whole Department of Homeland Security. We also need to be talking about what comes next, and that needs to be a pathway to citizenship. You have roughly 11 million people who are undocumented in this country. That didn't happen overnight. Again, as the result of policy, when this country can keep an entire population undocumented,
sure,
you can keep them living in fear. You can exploit them. It's a tactic. And a pathway to citizenship is one step in making sure that we are advancing stability and equity. It's certainly not the last step. As we know, we're seeing even U.S. citizens who are being gunned down. So it's not just a piece of paper. We need to be talking about what it means as an entire society to truly transform how we look at immigration as a country.
Okay. I see that. Now, if you had to like just summarize your platform,
Yeah.
which is like, it's a lame question, but at the same time, just to kind of like make sure that anybody watching
Of
this
course.
has the bigger picture.
Yeah. Yeah,
How would
absolutely.
you?
I mean, I would summarize it by saying that my platform and what I'm running on is to put power back in the hands of everyday working families like the one I grew up in here in Chicago. Again, seeing what my parents had to go through, knowing that there are millions facing those conditions, if not worse, and for many it's worse. We have to, our policymakers need to be advancing equitable policies, and that means rebalancing our economy. That means making sure that we have a progressive tax system where the burden doesn't keep falling on working people, and where we can invest in healthcare for all, where we can make our public schools strong, where we have tuition-free colleges, right? Where people can afford fresh, healthy food in their neighborhoods, in their communities. We should not be paying billions and billions and billions of dollars into the military forces we see both abroad and in our streets when we can't even make sure people are fed.
Sure.
So that's what I mean by a restructure of what our policies need to invest in and the things that I would fight for at the congressional level. Because I know the cost of losing. The cost of losing is parents going to bed hungry. The cost of losing is people like Alex Preddy continuing to be shot in the streets.
Sure.
So the stakes could not be higher.
I see that now. I grew up in a long family history of Black Republicans all the way back to
wow. Yeah.
Lincoln, apparently. But my dad was in California politics in the 70s and 80s. So we grew up with like a more conservative perspective that I think tends to misinterpret progressive policymaking.
Yeah.
Because I think that what we're talking about, some of these policies you're discussing, is like for the most part, policymakers are comfortable subsidizing entire sectors, like the agricultural sector. One of the reasons that it exists is because of the subsidies. Like the energy sector, a lot of people will cite like Louisiana as like a case study for subsidies in the energy sector, and
Yeah.
the people don't get any benefits when these sectors get these subsidies. Some will argue that like maybe there are some jobs that, you know, people travel to work there. It's not like they like hire the local communities and things. There's other tons of research gets subsidized. So we're already like printing money in all of these different areas. So I feel like it's pretty reasonable at this point to think that like healthcare and education,
Right. The very basics of what people need to live. I mean, it's I was just in Garfield Park and inside the Harrison Courts buildings, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with these properties, but this is an area of the city where you're seeing something as basic and fundamental as housing being treated as a luxury for some people, right? And the conditions they're facing inside it's abhorrent. It's people lack basic heat. They're quite literally using their stoves to heat up their units.
right?
They have mold everywhere. One of the tenants who is facing eviction, if you can believe that, they're actually trying to evict him, and he can't even, it's basically unlivable for him. So that doesn't make any sense. But, you know, he told me, he's like, I'd rather live on the CTA than live here.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well, we have that too.
Yeah, exactly. When we think about housing, these are the very basic things people need to live. You cannot survive without a roof over your head, especially in this cold. You cannot survive without that. None of us are better than someone who's unhoused. We've just been luckier in our lives. And there's no excuse for how our taxpayer dollars can fund terror and violence, but they can't make sure people are housed.
Sure.
You know, and that's something that I think it's unacceptable when, especially in this day and age, but it's also like, to me, there is no compromising on those basic fundamentals of making sure people have housing, of making sure people have food. Again, these are basic things for survival. So I get very upset when thinking about how even those within our own Democratic Party have, watered down their language or kind of throw their hands up and say, oh, we can't do something like this or we can't do something like that. Young people have always had the moral clarity and have always led in movement spaces. And I think it's our generation that is able to face this very terrifying moment as our country is facing and have the moral clarity to say, no, like we cannot continue down this path.
Right.
It's those decisions that have gotten us here to this moment. We cannot continue down this pattern. And I think that's, again, we need people who are going to draw the line in the sand and aren't going to budge.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. And also, I am seeing a lot of more young people being civically engaged lately. Like, are you noticing those nuances?
Definitely. Yeah. And I would say young people have always been civically engaged, but we've been told to choose the lesser of two evils all the time. And we deserve to have people that are values aligned in office. Again, just look at the most recent DHS spending bill that passed in the House. 7 Democrats voted in favor of that.
Okay.
That is not leadership. It is inexcusable for you to say, yes, we're going to give more money to the very agencies that just shot people dead in the streets.
Sure.
And young people are fired up and they deserve to have candidates and electeds who they are excited about and who understand our generation, a generation that has inherited crises after crises after crises. We have been the ones to say, we know that this is the way our country has functioned, but it also doesn't have to be this way anymore. And I think it's time for a changing of the guard. And it's young people who have always been part of that revolution.
Anything else that you think about, like just around your campaign or how you feel about how things are shaping up before mail-in ballots are coming out on the 5th of February?
Mm-hmm.
So like we're really close to the election. I think
voting's going to start, in February.
In like 8-9 days?
Yeah, it's like the first week of February. I believe it's February 5th is when people, can officially start early voting.
Mm-hmm.
And then the primary is obviously on March 17th. I mean, again, I think the thing I would emphasize here is that this is not a moment like what we've ever experienced in the past. And I know people feel it when they wake up and they are seeing news story after news story that is of something horrible that is happening in our country. And I would be very clear, like, this administration is eyeing the midterms as another opportunity for them to continue to consolidate their power even more. I mean, we are in several stages of authoritarianism right now, and we're inching very, very fast into a stage where they're going to use those midterms to try to, again, strangle our communities as much as they can. They're seeing what is it that they can get away with. I think we saw out of Minneapolis that Attorney General Pam Bondi was like, we will remove ICE under a few conditions, one of which is hand over your voter files.
Yep, I saw that.
Hand over your voter files. Get rid of your sanctuary city policies, right? So again, this is not an administration. We all know this. This is not an administration that is trying to negotiate in good faith or any crap like that, right? They have their plan. Project 2025 is over 50% implemented. That is something that they are moving very fast towards. And if we do not have the right people in office who are going to hold the line, who are going to think innovatively and think outside the box and realize, okay, we need to do things differently here, then we're going to continue to lose. And we cannot afford to do that anymore. We see what the stakes are. We see what it happens when we lose. It is quite literally people dying. And those are the stakes that we're faced with. Yeah.
It's a heavy moment.
It is. It is. But I think also it's a moment that we cannot look away from. And it's a moment where I'll say this. We were just out there in Oak Park hours after we heard the news of Alex Purdy being gunned down and executed in the streets. And that shows you people across this country, from Chicago to Minneapolis, they are ready to meet this moment. I know that. The fact that we are talking about how to expand general strikes, these are the conversations we need to be having about how we build true working class solidarity with, working and middle class people all across this country. This is something where this administration is putting their thumb on us, and they are quite literally suppressing us in every way possible. And what we're seeing on the streets when people are coming out and protesting, they're activated. This is not a moment where people are just sitting at home and scared. Yes, there is fear, but there is also power. And that is what everyday people are showing every day. We see it. So I think that that's something that I would also remind people of. It is a time unlike any before, but we also have to remember that this is also a time where we are seeing solidarity be built in real time.
Sure. Yeah, it is fascinating to witness, and obviously intense, shocking, scary sometimes.
Yeah.
So this is Anabel Mendoza. And yeah, it's awesome to talk with you and also to hear your perspective. Yeah. And hopefully this will motivate other people that we know to maybe play their little part in the bigger picture. We'll follow your race.
Please do. Yeah.
We will. And I wish you the best of luck.
Thanks so much, Chris. Appreciate it.